If you're into strange, real-sounding stories that stay with you long after they're over, you're in the right place. What you're about to hear is based on something I truly can't explain. And if you enjoy these kinds of experiences, consider subscribing to help keep them coming. It started on a rainy Tuesday evening in late October. I remember it clearly because campus was unusually quiet, the kind of quiet that settles deep and feels intentional, like something was waiting to happen. I was one of the few still wandering the halls of the Humanities building that night. Old bricks, warped wooden floors, and the smell of dust clinging to every corridor. Most students avoided it after dark, and I never questioned why. I just liked being alone when I worked. Room 6 was a strange place. It looked like every other classroom, but it always felt colder, even in the warmer months. The overhead lights flickered more often than not, and there was an odd stain on the back wall that janitors never seemed to clean. I'd been assigned a project that required peace and quiet, and the library was too packed. So I settled there, alone with my laptop, some scattered papers, and the ambient sound of rain tapping against the high windows. Hours passed. My coffee turned cold. The building had long since emptied out, and even the usual creaks of shifting would stopped. That silence again, but deeper now. Hollow. That's when I heard it. A faint scraping noise, like metal dragged over concrete. At first, I thought it was a leftover sound from a janitor somewhere in the building. But it was too rhythmic, too close. It was coming from the far left corner of the room, a place partially hidden behind a tall, heavy shelf filled with old course manuals and out-of-date textbooks. I stood slowly, my chair making a sharp sound that startled even me. I approached the corner, expecting to find nothing. But something caught my eye. The edge of the rug that covered the classroom floor was curled up in a strange way, not like someone had tripped over it. More like something underneath was pushing it up from below. I pulled the shelf aside a few inches, enough to reach the rug, and peeled it back. That's when I saw it. A metal hatch, no more than 2 feet across. Circular, rusted, with a faint line around its edge. Just enough to show it could be opened. It was flush with the floor, almost perfectly blended with the concrete under the boards. No markings, no label, nothing to suggest it was part of the building's blueprint. I'd never seen it before, and I'd spent weeks in that room. My breath caught. The scraping sound had stopped the moment I touched the hatch. For a long minute, I just stared at it. Then, against every logical impulse, I leaned closer. There was a smell musty, damp, like wet stone and old air, the kind of smell basements carried when they'd been shut for too long. I tried to lift it, but it wouldn't budge. It was like it had sealed itself shut, or had rusted into place over decades. Disappointed or maybe relieved, I pulled the rug back over it, moved the shelf, and packed up my things. But as I reached the door to leave, I heard it again. That same low, metallic scrape. And this time it was coming from beneath the floor. I didn't sleep that night. The sound of that scrape, steady, deliberate, kept replaying in my head like a looped recording. I kept thinking about the hatch. How out of place it was. How perfectly hidden. Why had I never seen it before? And more importantly, why had no one ever mentioned it? The next day, I went back to room 6. It was empty just like the night before. The rug was in place, the shelf untouched. No sign of anything odd. But something compelled me. I closed the door behind me and moved quickly. Pulled the shelf aside, pulled back the rug. The hatch was still there. Still rusted shut. This time I came prepared. I reached into my bag and took out a crowbar. Something I borrowed from the student theater workshop. They used it for set construction. I wedged the tip into the gap and pressed down slowly, carefully. First, nothing happened. Then, with a groan of old metal resisting change, the hatch shifted. The air that hit me was cold. Not just cool, cold, like stepping into a walk-in freezer. A burst of stale, damp air washed over me, thick with dust and something else. Something chemical, almost metallic. Inside was a narrow metal staircase, descending into total darkness. I shouldn't have gone down. Every instinct told me not to, but curiosity is a powerful thing, and in that moment it drowned out common sense. I turned on the flashlight app on my phone and stepped onto the first rung. The metal creaked beneath my weight. The sound echoed downward, like the stairwell had no bottom. I descended slowly, one hand gripping the cold railing, the other holding my phone out ahead. The staircase ended in a concrete corridor. Walls bare, ceiling low, floor stained with moisture and time. The hallway stretched into the darkness ahead, too far for my weak light to pierce completely. But what I did see made my chest tighten. Old doors, 5 of them, all identical, all painted the same sickly pale green, chipped and warped. Each one had a small, square window, fogged with age and grime. None of them had doorknobs, only metal latches like storage units or meat lockers. The air felt heavier down there. My breath became visible, even though it wasn't that cold above ground. I approached the first door and peered into the window. Nothing, just blackness. The second, the same. At the third, I saw something. Movement, a flicker, like a hand pulling back into the dark. I stumbled back, heart slamming in my chest. No sound, no explanation. I didn't check the 4th or 5th. I ran back up the stairs, slammed the hatch shut, and didn't stop moving until I was back in my car. I sat there, engine off, hands trembling on the steering wheel. Something was under Classroom 6, and I'd opened it. Days passed after my descent into the basement beneath Classroom 6, but the experience refused to fade. I found myself unable to focus on my studies or even on simple daily tasks. Every sound, every shadow seemed to remind me of that hidden place. Curiosity gnawed at me relentlessly. I started researching the history of the school, hoping to find some clue about the mysterious basement and its locked doors. What I discovered unsettled me more than I expected. The school had been built over what was once a series of underground storage rooms used during the Cold War era. These rooms were meant to serve as shelters, but records suggested they were also used for experiments. Nothing official, just rumors and faded notes in forgotten archives. One old newspaper clipping described a fire that had broken out decades ago, in the very section under the Humanities building. Several people reportedly disappeared without a trace. The authorities closed off access to the basement soon after, but the official reports were vague and quickly buried. I remembered the flicker behind the third door. Could it have been one of those lost souls? Or something else? Something far worse? Determined to understand, I prepared to return, this time better equipped and with a plan to document everything. The basement was no longer just a curiosity. It was a puzzle that I needed to solve, even if it meant facing whatever haunted those shadows. I couldn't shake the feeling that the basement was calling me back. The unease that had settled over me after my first visit only grew stronger with every passing day. I knew I had to go back, to face whatever secrets were hidden beneath Classroom 6. This time I came prepared. I brought a powerful flashlight, a camera to document everything, and a small voice recorder in case I captured anything unusual. The school was eerily quiet when I arrived, the usual bustle of students and teachers replaced by the hollow sound of my footsteps. Descending the narrow stairwell again, the familiar cold and damp air wrapped around me like a shroud. The darkness seemed deeper, thicker this time, as if the shadows themselves were alive. My flashlight beam sliced through the gloom, illuminating cracked walls and old peeling paint. I made my way to the locked doors I had seen before, trying each one carefully. One by one, they creaked open, revealing rooms filled with forgotten relics. Old filing cabinets, rusted metal shelves, and piles of dust-covered books and papers. It felt like stepping back into another era. But it was the third door that held the most mystery. Beyond it, the air was colder, heavier. The faint flicker I had seen before pulsed again in the darkness. I stepped inside slowly, heart pounding, and shone my light around. At first, there was nothing but shadows. Then, just at the edge of the light, I caught movement. A fleeting glimpse of a figure, pale and translucent, drifting silently across the room. I raised the camera and snapped a photo, but when I checked the screen, the image was blurred, as if the figure didn't want to be seen. A whisper of cold air brushed past my ear, and a low hum filled the room. I felt an overwhelming sadness, a sorrow that seeped into my bones. The basement was more than just abandoned storage. It was a tomb of forgotten stories, a prison for lost souls. I stayed as long as I could, documenting everything, but the weight of the place was suffocating. Reluctantly, I made my way back upstairs, locking the doors behind me. Outside, the daylight felt like a fragile shield against the darkness I had left behind. But I knew this wasn't the end. The basement had secrets yet to reveal, and I was determined to uncover them, no matter the cost. I couldn't stay away. The mystery of the basement had consumed me, pulling me back for one last visit. This time, I was ready to face whatever was waiting in the darkness beneath classroom 6. I arrived after hours, the school silent except for the faint creak of old wood settling. The stairwell felt colder than before, as if the air itself was charged with unseen energy. My flashlight pierced the thick darkness as I descended, heart hammering. When I reached the third door, I noticed something new. A faint symbol etched into the wood, worn but still visible. I traced it with my fingers, a chill running down my spine. The door unlocked easily this time, as if it had been waiting for me. Inside, the room was filled with relics from the past. Old photographs, documents, and scattered belongings that told stories long forgotten. Among them was a journal, its pages yellowed and fragile. As I read, the pieces began to fit together. The basement had been used for secret experiments during the Cold War, attempting to communicate with the spirit world. The fire had been an accident, trapping several people below. Their spirits, bound to the basement, had been trying to reach out ever since. The flickering light, the whispers, the shadows, they were echoes of those lost souls, trapped between worlds. I felt a strange calm then, as if the spirits had accepted my presence. The sadness remained, but it was no longer suffocating. I closed the journal, feeling the weight of their stories with me. Leaving the basement for the final time, I locked the doors behind me. I knew the secrets I uncovered were not just history, they were a warning. Some places are meant to stay hidden, their stories untold. But I also knew that some truths, no matter how dark, need to be faced. And I was ready to share this story, so others might understand the echoes from the past beneath classroom 6.